What happens when Hollywood royalty meets actual royalty on live television and things go absolutely sideways? Well, buckle up, because what unfolded on Today with Jenna and Friends will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about celebrity interviews. Before we dive into this explosive encounter, make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, because trust me, you're going to want to discuss this one. The morning started like any other at the NBC studios in New York. Jenna Bush Hager was reviewing her notes one final time, her usual warm smile masking the slight tension she always felt before big interviews. Today's guest was none other than Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, who was making her rounds promoting her latest venture. What seemed like a routine promotional appearance was about to become anything but routine. Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Today with Jenna and Friends, Jenna began, her voice carrying its trademark warmth as she settled into her chair across from Meghan. I'm here with Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, who's here to talk about her exciting new projects. Meghan, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Meghan, impeccably dressed in a cream blazer that seemed to catch the studio lights perfectly, offered her practiced smile. Thank you for having me, Jenna. It's always wonderful to connect with your audience. From the start, there was something different in Meghan's demeanor. Her usual polished composure seemed more guarded than usual, her responses measured in a way that suggested she was bracing for something. Jenna, seasoned interviewer that she was, picked up on the subtle shift. Immediately, so let's talk about your latest project, Jenna continued, leaning forward slightly. You've been working on some really meaningful initiatives lately. Can you tell us what's been driving your passion for this particular cause? Meghan's eyes flickered, just for a moment, before she launched into what sounded like a well-rehearsed response. Well, Jenna, I think it's important to use whatever platform you have to make a difference. When you've been given opportunities, you have a responsibility to lift others up. There was something in the way she emphasized certain words that made Jenna pause. The studio audience, small but attentive, seemed to sense the undercurrent of tension that was beginning to build. Even the camera crew, usually invisible in their professionalism, exchanged glances. That's beautiful, Jenna responded, though her interviewer instincts were now fully engaged. And speaking of platforms, you've certainly navigated some interesting waters in recent years. How do you handle the scrutiny that comes with being in the public eye, especially when it feels unfair or inaccurate? The question hung in the air for just a beat too long. Meghan's smile faltered slightly, and when she spoke, there was a new edge to her voice that hadn't been there moments before. You know, Jenna, I find it interesting that we always seem to focus on how women handle scrutiny, rather than questioning why that scrutiny exists in the first place. Her tone remained measured, but there was steel underneath the silk. Why is it that when a woman speaks up for herself or her family, it's seen as controversial, but when others do far worse, it's just Tuesday? Jenna blinked, clearly not expecting the conversation to take this particular turn. The energy in the studio shifted palpably. This wasn't going according to the pre-interview script, and everyone could feel it. I think that's a fair point, Jenna said carefully, trying to steer back to safer waters. But I was really asking more about your personal coping mechanisms. How you stay grounded when, when what? Meghan interrupted, her voice still controlled, but gaining intensity. When people create narratives about me that have no basis in reality, when every move I make is dissected and twisted to fit whatever story someone wants to tell. Is that what you mean by staying grounded? The studio fell silent, except for the hum of the cameras. Jenna, to her credit, didn't back down, but her approach became more direct. Meghan, I understand there have been challenges, but surely you knew that marrying into the royal family would come with intense media attention. Wasn't that something you were prepared for? Prepared for media attention? Absolutely. Meghan's voice rose slightly, just enough to signal that the gloves were coming off. Prepared for lies, manipulation, and a coordinated campaign to destroy my reputation. That's not media attention, Jenna. That's something else entirely. The audience was completely captivated now, phones discreetly appearing to capture what was clearly becoming an unscripted moment of television history. Social media notifications were undoubtedly already pinging across the country as clips began to circulate, but Meghan, Jenna pressed, her journalistic instincts overriding any desire to keep things light. Don't you think there's a difference between legitimate criticism and what you're describing? Some of the coverage has been critical, yes, But isn't that part of being a public figure? Meghan's composure cracked just slightly, and when she spoke again, her voice carried a passion that had been carefully contained until this moment. Legitimate criticism. Is it legitimate criticism when they question my children's heritage? When they create stories about me making people cry when the exact opposite happened? When they paint me as difficult and demanding for asking that my family be protected from racist abuse? Her eyes were blazing now, all pretense of the polished royal persona falling away. Tell me, Jenna, at what point does legitimate criticism become targeted harassment? The question hit the studio like a thunderbolt. Jenna, clearly feeling the weight of the moment, took a deep breath before responding. Those are serious allegations, Meghan. Are you saying that the British press engaged in a deliberate campaign against you? I'm not alleging anything, Meghan replied, her voice steady but fierce. I'm stating facts, and the fact is that there are receipts for all of it. Every lie, every coordinated attack, every attempt to silence me when I tried to defend myself. And my family, the tension in the room was now so thick it was almost visible. Jenna realized she was no longer conducting a promotional interview. She was in the middle of what was rapidly becoming an explosive tell-all moment, and Meghan was just getting started. Jenna could feel the show slipping away from her control, but there was no stopping this train now. The woman sitting across from her was no longer the carefully managed public figure who had walked onto the set 20 minutes earlier. Someone who had clearly been holding back for far too long. Meghan, when you talk about receipts, Jenna said, her voice steady despite the chaos brewing around them. What exactly are you referring to? Because these are pretty significant claims you're making on live television. Meghan leaned forward, in her chair, her eyes never leaving Jenna's face. I'm talking about text messages, Jenna, email chains, recorded conversations. I'm talking about documented proof of coordinated efforts to plant negative stories about me while simultaneously blocking any attempt I made to correct the record. The studio audience was completely silent now, hanging on every word. Behind the cameras, producers were frantically trying to decide whether to cut to commercial or let this explosive moment continue to unfold. You're saying you have evidence of this coordination? Jenna asked, her journalist instincts fully engaged now. This was no longer about promoting Meghan's latest project. This was breaking news happening in real time. I have evidence that certain members of the royal household were feeding information to specific journalists, Meghan replied, her voice gaining strength with each revelation. I have proof that stories were planted to coincide with positive news about Harry and me, specifically to overshadow anything good we were doing. Jenna felt her heart racing. This was the kind of interview that careers were made of, but it was also the kind that could end them just as quickly if not handled properly. These are serious accusations, Meghan. Are you prepared to back them up? Because what you're describing sounds like a systematic campaign. It was a systematic campaign, Meghan said without hesitation, and the most heartbreaking part is that it wasn't just strangers doing this to us. It was people we trusted. People who smiled to our faces while they were actively working to destroy our reputation behind our backs. The emotion in her voice was raw now, all traces of her usual composed, public persona completely gone. Jenna could see tears forming in Meghan's eyes, but there was also something else there, something that looked like relief. Can you give us a specific example? Jenna pressed gently. Something concrete that our viewers can understand. Meghan took a deep breath, and when she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried clearly through the studio's sensitive microphones. The story about me making Catherine cry before my wedding, she began, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. That story was planted deliberately, and it was the complete opposite of what actually happened. Catherine made me cry, not the other way around. And when I tried to correct that narrative, I was told it would be better for everyone if I just stayed quiet. The revelation hit the studio like a bomb. Jenna could literally hear gasps from the audience, and she was certain that social media was exploding right now with clips of this moment. You're saying that the Duchess of Cambridge made you cry, and then allowed the press to report the opposite? Jenna asked, wanting to make sure she understood correctly. I'm saying that's exactly what happened, Meghan replied, her voice stronger now, and I'm saying that when I begged them to correct the record, I was told that it would make Catherine look bad, so it was better to let people think I was the one who had been cruel. Jenna could feel the weight of this moment. This wasn't just celebrity gossip anymore. This was a member of the British royal family making explosive allegations on live American television. Meghan, you understand that what you're saying will have enormous implications. This isn't just about you anymore. This involves other members of the royal family. It's always involved other members of the royal family, Meghan shot back, her composure cracking further. That's exactly the point. Jenna, I was never allowed to defend myself because it might make someone else look bad. My reputation, my mental health, my family's safety, none of that mattered as long as the institution was protected. The passion in her voice was building to a crescendo now, and Jenna realized that years of suppressed frustration were pouring out all at once. And let's talk about my mental health for a minute, Meghan continued, her voice rising, because that's another area where I was completely failed. When I went to the institution for help, when I told them I was having thoughts of self-harm, do you know what they told me? Jenna's heart sank. She could see where this was going, and she knew it was going to be devastating. They told me it. Wouldn't be good for the institution if I got help, Meghan said, tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. They told me that I needed to think about how it would look if it got out that a member of the royal family was struggling with mental health issues. The studio was dead silent. Even the camera operators seemed to have stopped breathing. This was no longer just a heated interview. This was a woman having a complete breakdown on live television, and Jenna wasn't sure how to handle it. Meghan, she said softly, I can see how painful this is for you. Maybe we should take a moment. No, Meghan said firmly, wiping her tears but not backing down. I've been silent for too long. I've been told to think about everyone else's feelings, everyone else's reputation, everyone else's comfort. What about mine? What about my children's? She turned to look directly into the camera now, speaking not just to Jenna, but to the millions of people watching. I want people to understand something, she said, her voice steady despite the tears. I never wanted to be in this position. I never wanted to have to defend myself like this. But when they come for your children, when they question your children's place in the family because of their heritage, that's where I draw the line. Jenna felt like she was witnessing history, but she also felt the responsibility of keeping this interview from completely spiraling out of control. When you say they questioned your children's heritage, what specifically are you referring to? Meghan's eyes flashed with anger now, all traces of sadness replaced by a fierce protective instinct. There were conversations, Jenna, conversations about how dark my children's skin might be, conversations about whether they would be considered truly royal if they didn't look European enough. And these weren't conversations happening in some dark corner of the internet. These were conversations happening within the family. The audience gasped audibly now. Even Jenna, seasoned as she was, felt her composure slip for just a moment. This was bigger than anything she had expected when she walked into the studio that morning. Are you saying that members of the royal family expressed concerns about your children's skin color? Jenna asked, needing absolute clarity on such a serious allegation. I'm saying that there were concerns expressed about what my children would look like, and whether that would be a problem for the monarchy. Meghan, replied, her voice now cold with fury, and I'm saying that Harry and I made the decision that our children would not grow up in an environment where their worth was questioned because of their appearance. The weight of the moment was overwhelming. Jenna realized that she was no longer just conducting an interview, she was documenting what would likely become one of the most significant royal scandals in modern history. Jenna knew she was standing at a crossroads. She could either try to dial back the intensity or lean into what was clearly becoming the interview of her career. The journalist, in her one-out, Meghan, these are incredibly serious allegations. Are you prepared for the response this is going to generate? Because once these words are out there, there's no taking them back. Meghan straightened in her chair, wiping away the last of her tears, and when she spoke again, there was a finality in her voice that hadn't been there before. I'm more than prepared, Jenna. I've been preparing for this moment for years. Every time they silenced me, every time they chose protecting the institution over protecting me and my family. They were preparing me for this moment. She paused, looking directly into the camera again. And Jenna could see that whatever dam had been holding back years of frustration had now completely burst. People need to understand that I didn't leave that family lightly, Meghan continued. I tried to make it work. I bent over backwards to fit into their world, to follow their rules, to be the perfect duchess they wanted me to be. But there comes a point where you have to ask yourself, what am I sacrificing for this? And when the answer is your mental health, your children's well-being, and your own sense of self-worth, that's when you have to make a choice. Jenna could feel the producers in her ear, but she ignored them. This was too important to interrupt now. You mentioned earlier that you have documentation of some of these incidents. Are you planning to release any of that evidence? Meghan's smile was cold now, completely different from the warm expression she had walked in with. I've been holding on to that evidence for years, Jenna, waiting for the right moment, hoping I would never have to use it. But when you continue to be painted as the villain in a story where you were actually the victim, when your children are being affected by lies about their mother, you realize that sometimes the only way to clear your name is to show people the truth. The studio was electric, with tension now. Everyone present understood they were witnessing something unprecedented. So yes, Meghan continued, I am prepared to release evidence. Text messages, emails, recorded conversations. All of it, because I'm done being the scapegoat for an institution that would rather sacrifice one person than admit they made mistakes. Jenna felt her pulse racing. This was the kind of moment that would be replayed for years to come. What do you want? People to take away from this conversation. Meghan, what's your message to those who are watching right now? Meghan took a deep breath, and when she spoke, her voice carried a strength that seemed to fill the entire studio. I want people to understand that speaking your truth isn't an attack on anyone else. It's simply refusing to let other people's lies define who you are. I want women, especially women of color, to know that they don't have to accept being diminished or silenced just to make other people comfortable. She turned back to Jenna, and there was something almost peaceful in her expression now, as if a tremendous weight had been lifted from her shoulders. And I want people to know that everything I've done, every decision Harry and I have made, has been about protecting our family and giving our children the chance to grow up knowing their worth isn't determined by other people's prejudices or fears. Jenna knew the interview was coming to its natural conclusion, but she had one more question that needed to be asked. Do you have any regrets, Meghan, about how any of this has unfolded? Meghan was quiet for a long moment, considering the question carefully. My only regret, she said finally, is that it took me so long to find my voice again. I regret the years I spent trying to please people who were never going to accept me anyway. I regret not speaking up sooner when I saw how the lies were, affecting not just me, but Harry and our children. She paused, and when she continued, there was something almost defiant in her tone. But do I regret telling the truth today? Do I regret finally defending myself and my family? Absolutely not. If that makes me difficult or demanding or whatever they want to call me, then so be it. I'd rather be called difficult than be silent. While my children grow up thinking their mother was too weak to stand up for them, the power in those words was undeniable. Jenna could see that Meghan had found something in this conversation that had been missing for years. Her own sense of agency. This has been an extraordinary conversation, Meghan. I think our viewers are going to have a lot to process after hearing your side of the story. It's not my side of the story, Jenna, Meghan corrected gently but firmly. It's just the story. The truth doesn't have sides. It just is. As the interview wound down, Jenna could see that Meghan looked different than she had at the beginning. The careful mask was gone, replaced by something more authentic, more powerful. Whatever happened next, there was no doubt that this conversation would change everything. The camera stopped rolling, but neither woman moved immediately. The silence in the studio was profound, everyone processing what they had just witnessed. Finally, Meghan stood up, smoothing down her blazer, and extended her hand to Jenna. Thank you, she said simply, for letting me finally tell the truth. As Meghan walked off the set, Jenna turned back to the camera for her closing segment, knowing that what had just happened would be talked about for years to come. Well, there you have it, folks. An absolutely extraordinary conversation that I think will leave all of us with a lot to think about. The truth has a way of coming out eventually. And today, we witness someone finally deciding to take control of their own narrative. She looked directly into the camera, addressing her viewers with the gravity the moment deserved. This is The kind of raw, unfiltered conversation that reminds us why these discussions matter. Real people, real consequences, real courage to speak truth to power. Jenna could already imagine the headlines that would dominate the news cycle for weeks to come. Social media was undoubtedly exploding with clips and reactions. This interview would be dissected, analyzed, and debated from every possible angle. So, what did you think about Meghan's explosive revelations today? Do you believe her claims about coordination within the royal household? And what do you make of her decision to finally speak out